All right. Uh-oh, I have feedback already, June. Sorry. Now can you hear? You can a little bit. Sorry, guys, we have one little technical difficulty that we need to deal with real quick. Can they hear me now? Oh, good. It's gone. All right. Welcome, everybody. The regular meeting of the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors for March 29th, 2023 is called to order. Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner? Here. Ms. Cortez?
Here.
Ms. Ford?
Here.
Dr. Jones?
Present.
Mr. Hogan? And Ms. Wolfsey?
Here. Mr. Hogan has asked for an excused absence this evening. So, seeing no issues with that, we will count him as an excused absence then. May I have a motion to approve the amended agenda as presented? And I'll just note that the amendment for those that are sitting here is that the addition of ad hoc committee under the board chair report. Confirm motion.
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Lisa, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes. The amended agenda is approved. All right, Lisa, next we're on to review of action task items. Lisa, are there any outstanding items still? Or, oh, it's June.
There are a few outstanding items. The items from the March 12th meeting will be in this Friday's update, and they include the community engagement items and the academic slides. There were questions on that. That will be in Friday's update since there wasn't an update last week. Also, the outstanding item, a culturally responsive strategic plan, will be available in May.
Thank you for that report, June. All right, moving right along, we are coming to our public comment. We have, I believe it is 4 individuals today who have indicated they wish to address the board this evening. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and I believe we have Mr. Tom Love up first. Mr. Love, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I handed out some sheets here about our test scores from December. I believe it was December. It says winter diagnostic results. In there, it identifies that in kindergarten, 571 children were a year behind in December. I think it's critical that we look at a 2-year kindergarten program, or at least a kindergarten roundup to screen children. And if they're not ready for kindergarten, let's place them in the pre-K program. The state of Missouri has funding for 5-year-olds for pre-K. So why not take advantage of it? These 571 children are very likely to fail first grade if they're automatically promoted. Now, the district was automatically promoting children, as I've mentioned before, that were so young. Under the state law, they were required to actually complete kindergarten standards, and they were just automatically promoted. So they started kindergarten when they were 4 and ended up in 3rd grade, starting 3rd grade as 7-year-olds prior to August 1st. and every one of them was promoted, all 100 out of 100 August birthdays. So we need to have people who care about the children, that will allow the kindergarten teachers to screen them and the first grade teachers, and then place them where they're best suited. Also, in third grade, we have 589 children that were 2 years or more behind in reading. So that's the pipeline to prison, 589. I know COVID had something to do with that, but still, that's a huge number. It's 52% of the children tested were 2 years or more behind. Now, this isn't strictly reading like that law I brought up last month. That's strictly reading. This is English language arts, but I'm sure there's a large percentage, thousands of students that are failing currently. And then I put in the regulations here for the Title I to identify that the school district is not supposed to make the decisions. The administrators are not. It's supposed to be made at the school level. It's the parents, the teachers, and the principals. And it says here in the law, the regulations are the law, that bringing these decisions to the school level helps discourage an LEA-directed one-size-fits-all program. So we have 30-some instructional coaches who experienced teachers will say are basically, I've heard a couple words, I hate to say them, but they say useless and worthless. Now, in other, you know what? St. Louis is doing the same thing. They didn't have one reading specialist in their elementary schools either several years ago. They were instructional coaches. Not the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Next, we have the Ms. Lindsay Spees, I believe, from Harold Holiday Montessori PTA. Welcome, Ms. Spees. You have 3 minutes.
Like I said, my name is Lindsay Spees. I am the treasurer for Holiday Montessori. Holiday and Border Star have the distinction of being the two public Montessori schools in our district. Holiday in particular bears the distinction of an Association of Montessori International Certification, which is very rare in and of itself, but with regard to being a public school, it is even more rare. The issue that our children are encountering currently is the Montessori model has a 3-year cycle, which means that our children go through the 6th grade. This puts them at a disadvantage when trying to transfer from elementary school into the middle schools, which start at 6th grade. So caregivers and children are put in an untenable situation where they have to decide whether to cut short the benefits of that 3rd year in the Montessori 3-year cycle in order to secure a spot at very competitive middle schools like Lincoln, or complete that 3rd year and not have a spot come 7th grade. We have spoken to caregivers at our school who are very supportive of this. I have with me today 40 signed letters endorsing a proposal to either create a Montessori middle school option or to set aside sufficient seats in our middle schools to allow for the Holiday students to secure a spot in 7th grade. We have brought this to the attention during the DAC meetings as well. And again, we have parent support. I have with me today some other parents from Holiday. If you'd care to hear from them, we can do that as well. Anwar, did you want to come up? Or?
I'm sorry, but the policy is the person that signed up has to be.
Okay. No, not a problem, but we do have supporters here. So I just wanted to bring this to the board's attention and implore the board to come up with a solution so that our students and our caregivers are not put in the situation of having to cut short the benefits of their Montessori education in order to secure a spot in one of the signature middle schools like Lincoln. It is important to note that students in the Montessori programs have been with KCPS essentially their entire education, because students beyond kindergarten cannot enroll in our Montessori schools without prior Montessori experience. So essentially it is penalizing students who have been with the district throughout their entire elementary careers, and are instead, those spots are going to students outside the district from charter schools, And I just ask the board to recognize that this is an issue, that the benefits of a Montessori education continue through that third year, which is of critical importance, and asking for a solution so that our students and our caregivers are not forced to choose between cutting short the benefits of a great education to secure a spot at a middle school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spees. All right, next we have Mr. Spark Bookhart. There you are. Welcome, Mr. Bookhart. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Spark Bookhart. I'm before you to ask for your support of the KCPS-TV resolution that comes before the board this evening. Often mistakes are made in history, and they remain just that, mistakes. I'd like to thank this board for your courage, because this unfortunate challenge happened way before your tenure, but your ability to critically evaluate the facts, to utilize your best judgment to right a clear wrong is admirable. While you as a body did this work together, I'd like to give a special acknowledgement to Board Member Candace Buckner for inviting the Ace family to present its case before the CCE committee almost a year ago. And I also would like to acknowledge Jennifer Wolfsey for her diligent effort to get this resolution before you and over the finish line. The ACE family and community is still strong. Started 35 years ago in this city, and for their entire tenure here, provided quality education to families in this community. So we desire to reinvigorate that tradition, and I'd like to also finally give flowers while we can to the Queen Mother, the founder and the Queen Mother of African-Centered Education in Kansas City, who's in the audience today, Queen Mother Audrey Ballard. I thank you for excavating this issue. I thank you for your diligence and time and looking at this issue. And I ask for your support of the resolution later on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bookhart. All right, and I believe we have one more speaker, Dr. Linwood Tawhid. Welcome, and you have 3 minutes as well. And we'll get the timer working this time.
Okay, no problem. Good evening, esteemed board members. I am Dr. Linwood Tawhid. I am in the audience, the only in the audience member of the board of the African-Centered Education Collegiate Campus. I was one of the founding members of the African-Centered Education Task Force Incorporated. So as Mr. Bookhart says, this work goes back at least to 1987, okay, in terms of establishing the African-Centered Education Collegiate Campus. And as Mr. Bookhart also said, you know, there are mistakes that are done in history. And it is not often that we get the chance to go back and remedy a mistake, particularly a serious mistake, and then get a chance to move forward. So on behalf of the board of the African-Centered Education Collegiate Campus, I'll call it ACE from now on behalf of that board, community members, students, parents who were supporters of that process, I want to commend you for the courage that it has taken you to move to this point. That's not to be diminished. So much in today's time, courage is very much lacking. Organizations are continuously looking to shirk their responsibilities, to lay the blame on others, to say, hey, that happened in the past, but I had nothing to do with that. So I commend this board for its courage, for its for taking on the moral and ethical responsibility that you have sworn to as members of this school board to move education forward. And there is no doubt that as this process moves forward, the children and parents and citizens of this school district, of this city, of this country will be benefited by the things that you're going to do today. I want to acknowledge members who are in the audience. There are students who graduated from that school who are in this audience from ACE. There are parents. There are faculty members, teachers of that process. And again, there is Queen Mother Audrey Ballard, who has been the spiritual, educational, professional spirit for that process. And just wanted to say thank you again for your courage in moving this forward.
Thank you, Dr. Tahi. All right. Next, we move to the District Advisory Council report, and for that, we have the chair of the DAC, Ms. Angie Lyle. Welcome, Ms. Lyle.
Good evening. Superintendent Dr. Collier and board, thank you again for allowing the District Advisory Committee to give our report. With only one more meeting left to give this year, we felt it prudent to focus this report on some obvious missed opportunities for community engagement, which we feel must be addressed appropriately before we campaign for a bond issue. Our DACX Communications Committee has been hard at work identifying these gaps and urge you to take it or to do what it takes to rectify these before moving out into the public with our campaign. The Communications Committee, which I'm the chair of, consists of our corresponding secretary, Amanda Trout, and the two other KCPS parents. And we have a background in marketing and social media communications, which will play a big role in what we have to say this evening. First and foremost, the biggest complaints that we've heard throughout all of our meetings is the delays in transportation, and specifically notices with regards to delays in transportation. And I'm sorry, I lost my spot already. Those complaints range from not having enough time to figure out an alternative mode of transportation to the sometimes tone deafness of those communications, with just a little more empathy in the overall tone in the time that a parent needs to find an alternative mode. We think that could do a lot to improve how those messages are received overall. We feel especially there should be some sort of alternative for parents who can't find the alternative mode of transportation for themselves, which should also be included in the communication that goes out. For example, many parents received a message like, "These bus routes do not have drivers, 7, 15, 19, 22, 30, and 31. And transportation's working on it, but we suggest an alternative mode of transportation for today." And that was sent out at 2:27 p.m., 7 minutes after school let out. So it left parents scrambling, and it leaves kind of a bad taste in their mouths from what we're hearing. It's just not, we should do better at communicating those transportation failures. We do want to thank David Dingus with Transportation for coming to our meeting. He came and spoke at our DAC meeting. It was extremely informative. We really do understand the issue at hand. We need more drivers. We need people to come and drive, and we understand that. We just think the communication could be a little bit better. So we need to expand on that strategy moving forward. Secondly, our committee has been exploring the issues with our website on both the global level for KCPS and at that different school levels. We created a feedback survey to collect ideas for improvements and have had conversations with Jonathan Solomon regarding various aspects from communications. And we were told there were no current plans to change anything related to navigation or layout at this time, and my further conversations with Hope indicated that was a contractual obligation at this point. Regardless of what's possible, our DAC believes that changes to navigation should be seriously considered prior to launching any kind of an engagement campaign. If our feedback from parents is that the website is hard to navigate and find things on, then we need to address that before asking those same parents to pay for it. if we can't fix these items prior to the bond campaign, we'll make it part of the reason why we need the bond. Either way, we need to prioritize our communication to the community about the dysfunction of the website and what we're going to be doing about it. Some items on our website should be fixed immediately, things we'd like to call low-hanging fruit. For example, if you go to my school's calendar, there's nothing school-related listed on it. No sports, no clubs, no concerts, no prom, which is next week, no graduation date. So when I asked about that, I was told someone from the school needs to submit those items to the web team to be added to the calendar. But I'm just wondering why no one would tell the web team when our graduation was happening. It's happening on May 16th, by the way. I found out at our SAC meeting. I did send an email to our FACE liaison to ask why dates aren't on the calendar. I haven't heard back. My question as a parent and also as someone who does this for a living is, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to at least keep the school calendars up to date? And should our FACE liaisons be trained to do this, since it falls under family and community engagement? Our DAC does applaud the district's movement to create those positions. We just don't see the benefits just yet, and we see them at our meetings, and we've asked them to share out our newsletters, but we're not exactly sure if that's happening. As a matter of fact, we heard from one student who was confused about why they hadn't heard about programs like KC Scholars. This student felt that they were frequently missing out on opportunities because the administration of their school may have deemed them not worthy of those opportunities. This is what they actually said at our DAC meeting, at the last DAC meeting. And that's definitely not what we want our students to feel like. And so we think that, there should definitely be a better multiple touch points for those students, and even a flyer hanging in the hallway to tell these kids about these things would be better than what we're doing now, because they're not seeing it. They're not seeing whatever system is being used. We feel that each school should maybe have a dedicated live streaming device or some sort of live streaming at their schools. I provide it as a volunteer, but I'm a senior parent, so I won't be there next year. We don't have a volunteer stepping up. And I know that those transparency of those parent meetings are a huge success and reason why parents get involved. If they know these meetings are happening, or they can see them online, or there's more availability to that, maybe that could be something a FACE liaison could help with, or some person at the school. Either way, there should be someone at the school who's working with the web team to make sure everything's on the calendar. I don't know where my time is up. But
You have 30 seconds.
I'm sure I went over to 6
No,
minutes.
you
so,
have
okay.
30 seconds left.
Anyway, so there was another thing that came out of the meetings that we've had, and that was a suggestion of an asked and answered database on our website. Very similar to frequently asked questions, but just take the frequently out and include every question that every parent has ever asked and who's answered that question and what was the answer. It should be somewhat searchable, so if I go to the website and I search for lunch menu right now, I used to be able to find the lunch menu, but now I can't. I think I'm directed to a few other places to maybe find an app, but I can't find it.
Thank you very much for your report. I just want to say I captured those for action items, so we'll make sure that we have those passed on to Dr. Collier and her team. All right. So now, next, I get to turn this over to Dr. Collier for the superintendent's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. This evening, we will be covering a number of items. The very first will be the Sankofa Oratory Contest winners, and we're really excited to celebrate our students who submitted their, I don't want to call them acts, but their speeches. But the winners of the contest are here this evening, and we'll have an opportunity to hear from them, and so we're looking forward to that. We'll also have a video highlight that will cover what we did during Black History Month this past year. We're going to also cover new school boundaries for Truce and Longfellow, our technology plan update, and then finally facilities update and bond planning update. So at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Daryl Davis, our interim deputy superintendent, who will introduce our Sankofa Oratory Contest winners.
All right, thank you, Dr. Collier, and good evening, Vice Chair Wolfsey, members of the board and audience. We are just so excited to have this year's winners before us. This is our, I believe, 4th or 5th year for this contest in the great tradition of orators in American history, particularly African Americans, from Thurgood Marshall to Marcus Garvey, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, so many, Maya Angelou, Barack Obama. We know we have great orators, future orators, current and future, I should say, in our midst. And so tonight we want to recognize our winners. This is the committee that went through all of the submissions. It was very difficult. We had quite a few great submissions this year. That committee consisted of Marquise Hall, who is not here this evening, who put this slide deck together, Jasmine Brooks, Rhea Rivers, Chris Odom. We appreciate that committee. And then, so we will call up our first winner. We have 4 winners, 1 in each division. We have our primary, intermediate, middle school, and high school divisions. And so, first off, let me introduce Ethan Betsy is a 2nd grader at Harold Holliday Montessori, 7 years old, loves recess and playing with his toys, currently learning to play the piano. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if Ethan can come on up, he will be reciting, "Hey, Black Child." And let's see, do we have a, tell you what, let's do it right here.
Okay.
We practice turning to the
Okay,
audience.
yes.
Do you want to?
Do we have a, oh, excellent, excellent. Okay. All right, awesome. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ethan Bessie. I'm 7 years old. I'm in 2nd grade, and I have a powerful mind. I'm an autism warrior, and in Harold Holiday Montessori schools. That's where I go to school. And I will be reciting you the Hey Black Child poem by Country Cullen. Hey Black Child by Country Cullen. Hey Black Child, do you know who you are, who you really are? Do you know you could be what you want to be if you try to be what you can be? Hey Black Child, do you know where you're going, where you're really going? Do you know you can learn what you want to learn if you try to learn what you can learn? Hey, Black Child, do you know you are strong? I mean really strong. Do you know you can do what you want to do if you try to do what you can do? Hey, Black Child, be what you could be. Learn what you must learn. Do what you could do. And tomorrow, your nation will be what you want it to be.
All right, Ethan, that was awesome. Please stay up here. If there are any family members and staff who are here with Ethan, if you will join our superintendent and board vice chair. And here's your certificate. Congratulations. All right, congratulations again. Ladies and gentlemen, our second first place winner, this time for the intermediate division, we have Jemiah Cornelius, a fifth grader at Wendell Phillips. Jemiah loves to do nails, is considering being a nail technician in the future, also would like to be a backup dancer. Please join me at the podium. And Jemiah is reciting a poem about Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman didn't take no stuff, wasn't scared of nothing either. Didn't come in this world to be no slave and wasn't gonna stay one either. Farewell, she sang to her friends one night. She was mighty sad to leave 'em, but she ran away that dark, hot night, ran looking for her freedom. She ran to the woods and she ran through the woods with the slave catchers right behind her. But she kept on going till she got to the north where those mean men couldn't find her. 19 times she went back south to get 300 others. She ran for her freedom 19 times to save black sisters and brothers. Harriet Tubman didn't take no stuff, wasn't scared of nothing either. Didn't come in this world to be no slave and wasn't gonna stay one either. And wasn't gonna stay one either.
Excellent, excellent. Present you with this. Congratulations. And if we have any family members or staff here to support Jemiah, please join our superintendent and board vice chair. All right, congratulations. All right, next up, our first place winner for the middle school division, we have Maxwell Richards, a seventh grader at Lincoln College Prep Middle School. He's enthusiastic, loves to build things, and has a passion for Legos. He's currently enrolled in Project Lead the Way. He also loves the diversity and community and the overall positivity within the school. Please join me at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, Maxwell is reciting a speech titled, "Don't Stop."
Hello, everyone. My name is Maxwell Richards, and today I'll be reciting my speech that I wrote titled Don't Stop. What do you think when you hear the word black? Do you see the darkness of ink, the night sky, or maybe your favorite shirt? Now, what do you think when you hear the word black to describe a group of people? Do you see people of African heritage, or a group of people who have fought for rights since the beginning of time and will keep fighting for their future? Now, what do you see when you see me? According to children at my school, they say they see light skin, mulatto, house slave, the thin line in the middle, and someone who can only say nig, but not the rest. That's what they say, but that won't stop me. Take another look. Yes, I may be black and white, but did you know I'm Nigerian, Irish, and Welsh to be more precise? Some of my ancestors were forced here to be enslaved for being inferior, and people used them for their success and profit. But my ancestors were enslaved here in Missouri and fought their whole lives to enjoy their lives. Bet you didn't know that, huh? Well, another topic is most people think you can't really be racist to white people, as they invented the race to give themselves an advantage over other people. Well, what about me? I am black and white, yet you're being racist to me, and that isn't racism? You're making a loophole in your silly rules, but that won't stop me. Look again. I might be biracial, but I'm at the same disadvantage with my fellow colleagues of color. Look at figures of color in history. Malcolm X had his dream killed by one of his teachers and even called a racist slur. That didn't stop him. He became an iconic figure to help with the rights of black people until he was killed. Rosa Parks was denied seating on a bus and was imprisoned, but that didn't even stop her. She became an iconic figure of civil rights and even changed laws where her home was. Even here, yes, our very own Mayor Quinton Lucas experienced conflict of identity and problems of his social background, which can be affiliated with racism. That didn't stop him. He went to Cornell, studied apartheid in South Africa, and eventually became our mayor. So I might be affected from some way in stereotypes, discrimination, and hate, but that will not stop me. I plan to finish this year positively, and all this hate won't bother me in my path to achieve this. But I know to not let stuff bother me, and I won't stop until I reach my goals. We need to all keep pushing, so do not stop and keep reaching for your goals.
All right, if we have any, great job, Maxwell. If we have any staff or family here to support Maxwell, please join our superintendent and board vice chair for a photo. Our fourth and final winner tonight comes in the high school division. Jayla Lee is a 12th grade graduating senior at Paseo Academy, majoring in creative writing. She has been a district intern, more specifically a peer tutor at Wendell Phillips Elementary. She is on the KCPS Student Planning Committee. She loves Paseo for the diversity and creativity. Tonight, she is reciting an original poem titled The Importance of Black History. Jayla Lee.
Hi, my name is Jayla Lee. I am a senior and I attend Paseo Academy. It's my last year, and I am very grateful to be in here in front of y'all, reciting my own personal poem. See the importance of Black history. We come from a time we used to pray not to die, walking through the streets even scared to be alive. When people used to be scared of whites, but now we can't even look at our own race living their best life. For real? Are you serious? Man, none of us dead, no real case, no real court session. Just another name to put on a t-shirt. Just another name to scream who died from a shooting. Not an accident, but the innocence of one another. It's crazy how we can just sit there living our lives knowing there's a family praying, crying that their kids come home tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean black kids come home tonight. Do they really want to be targeted here? Just because of the color of my skin. But they don't know. We come out to win.
Great job, Jayla. If there are any staff or family members here supporting Jayla, please join our superintendent and board vice chair for a photo. Let's give all of our winners one more round of applause. They also earned a $100 gift card. Congratulations again.
Yes, that was awesome. It really was. Let's give all of the students another round of applause. All right, at this time, we're going to have our video highlight, and it will be a review of our Black History Month programming.
The month of February is known as Black History Month, a time to celebrate and honor the achievements and contributions of Black history makers from around the world. In Kansas City Public Schools, it was no different. Throughout the month of February, KCPS honored local Black history makers who have inspired and done great things for our community. Their stories and accomplishments were shared on social media to inspire and educate the community. KCPS also hosted a Lunch and Learn event during Black History Month. The event featured amazing performances of dance and music, great conversations, and a keynote speaker who inspired us all with a great message. In addition, KCPS hosted district-wide events to celebrate Black History Month in the schools. One of those events was the Sankofa competition, where students competed in a contest that tested their knowledge of Black history, culture, and poetry. Overall, Black History Month was a great time for KCPS to celebrate and remember the achievements and contributions of many brave African Americans from Kansas City and around the world. Through social media, Lunch and Learn events, and district-wide activities and competitions, KCPS honored and celebrated the important role that Black trailblazers have played in our community and society as a whole.
Had a wonderful Black History Month programming, and we had an on-the-road event that was really awesome. It wasn't featured in the video, but we had an opportunity to go to the Coterie Theater and see a play that was written by a local Black playwright. And it was an opportunity for us as staff members to get out and to learn together as well. And so that was also another awesome activity that happened. Each time we celebrate a cultural month, we're making it a point to do an on-the-road event where we immerse ourselves in the community and in that culture, whatever culture that may be, so that we can learn together. So that was really exciting this year. Thank you, Dr. Davis, for organizing much of what we did during Black History Month. All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and move into our first presentation for the evening. It's our new school boundaries for Troost and Longfellow. This will be presented by Jesse Lang, our Manager of Planning and Real Estate.
All right, good evening. It's going to be hard to follow all of our great students that were just up here and those great speeches that we got to hear. But I'm briefly just going to talk about new school boundaries for parts of our district that were formerly zoned for Troost and Longfellow. As a part of Blueprint 2030 recommendations, those schools are slated for closure at the end of this school year. So we need to start the process of identifying the new school boundaries for those neighborhoods and areas. As a part of this process, what we did is we came back to our boundary adjustment criteria and goals. So the district does have these. These date back to 2013, so prior to the reinstating our middle schools, because before that we had very crazy boundaries. We had one elementary being split to three different high schools for no reason. So we really came together with the community to work through a process to determine, if the district has to adjust boundaries, what do we need to look at? And so a lot of people participated in those meetings. They gave us kind of these common themes that you see on your screen in front of you. They are listed in order of importance. So we had folks rate what's the most important thing to you. As you notice, some of those things are in direct conflict with one another. You can't achieve all of those things, but folks definitely told us work toward neighborhood school concept. We heard that over and over, keep neighborhoods together, and also reduce the need for students to cross those natural boundaries. So those are things like railroads that cause a boundary, a river, maybe like a highway, because it makes it more difficult to access their neighborhood school. The other things were a little less important on the ranking of folks, but this kind of gives you an idea as to what we're trying to achieve with this proposed boundary change. So the first school we'll talk about is Troost. On the left, you see the current boundaries for Troost highlighted in yellow. The background is white, the boundary there is in yellow. And then on the right side, we see the proposed new school assignment boundaries for neighborhoods formerly zoned for Troost. So for those living to the west of the Paseo, that would be Hale Cook. For north of 59th Street, that is King Elementary. South of 59th to Hartman. And then everyone on the east side of 71 Highway would be zoned for Banneker. The rationale behind this is really hitting those things that we just talked about. Number one, keeping neighborhoods together. So by taking the King boundary all the way down to 59th Street, we're able to keep Blue Hills primarily all together in one neighborhood school, which right now we're splitting Blue Hills amongst two elementary schools. Similar with west of the Paseo, having all those kids assigned to Hale Cook, that keeps 4963 together, all within the same neighborhood school. South of 59th, obviously Citadel neighborhood, keeping that neighborhood together, and then Town Fork Creek on the other side of 71. We're also hitting that goal of not having to cross a boundary of 71 Highway, because we don't want students to have to cross a major highway to get to their neighborhood school if possible. And then with Longfellow, it's a little bit more straightforward of a proposal. So on the left side there, you see Longfellow highlighted in the yellow. And then we also put Garcia on there. With this proposal, we are just taking the entire Longfellow boundary and absorbing it into Garcia. One reason why we weren't able to do that with Troost is just availability of seats. We don't have enough room to take all the kids to one spot. But in this situation, we can. We can fit all of the potential new students into the Garcia building as it stands. So that would just be increasing that boundary. And again, the rationale behind this would be impacting as few students as possible, trying to make the least amount of change. Within these boundaries, the only change are for these two elementary schools. Middle school and high school boundaries would not change. They would remain the same. So the next steps for engagement around school boundaries, we have already been talking about boundaries for quite a while. Having side conversations, having parent conversations, but this is going to be a more formal process. So we have an online boundary survey that is on the link there. That is going to be shared across the district, so don't be surprised if folks see it multiple times. That's out there. We'd love for people to take the survey. There's also the QR code that they can scan and give us feedback. We want to share those proposals that we just went over, but then also ask folks if they have any suggestions for modifications. There's also upcoming engagement meetings. I'm a big proponent in not having a meeting for one topic, so we are joining existing meetings that are already on the calendar. For the public, particularly April 13th, there's a meeting at Longfellow, April 25th, a meeting at Troost. In addition to engaging the families that are already part of those schools, we'll be emailing the neighborhood associations that surround those schools to invite folks to come to those meetings. We hope that we get future prospective parents to come as well, because as you know, we've already made touch points with the parents that are in the school, but we need to reach people who are not part of those school communities yet, who one day will be joining the Kansas City Public Schools. And then folks can also email us feedback at that email address, which has been up and running throughout the process of Blueprint 2030.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board? Yes, Ms. Buckner.
Hi. Does this change affect any feeder patterns for middle school and high school?
It does, because we're not changing boundaries for middle or high. So there's really pros and cons to both pieces of it. One con is we don't have a pure feeder pattern for schools all the way across the board. So like, for example, with Longfellow, right now, Longfellow feeds into Central and Garcia feeds into Northeast, with all the students then becoming part of that Garcia boundary. All the Garcia students are not now going to feed into Northeast High School. They would be split. So the ones in the northern half of the boundary would feed into Northeast, and those in the southern half of the boundary would feed into Central still. And there's a few reasons to do that. One is, we've stated kind of during Blueprint 2030 that we're trying to impact as few students as possible, and we recognize that there's going to be additional hard decisions in our communities, particularly for secondary schools. So we don't want to modify those boundaries and then turn around and do it a couple years later, especially since we know we don't necessarily have the ideal configuration right now. So we just want to keep them as they are. Secondly, you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul, I guess is the expression, because if you change the neighborhood boundary for one high school, you're going to be taking it away from another, and our schools are under-enrolled. We also gave schools enrollment goals as part of Blueprint 2030, so we want to adhere to those goals that they have without changing a boundary to make it either harder for them to reach their goal or easier for them to reach their goal based upon what we've already stated.
I just want to make sure I heard correctly. So the boundary has been extended, if we just look at Longfellow, the boundary has been extended, but the feeder pattern will remain the same because some of those kids will go to Central, some to Northeast.
We will have a feeder pattern, but we will no longer be able to say that all of Garcia goes to the same middle school and high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Dr. Jones or anything? Okay. Ms. Cortez? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lang.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to have our KCPS technology strategy, and this will be presented by Scott Jones, our Chief Information Technology Officer.
Good evening, Dr. Collier, Vice Chair Jennifer Wolfsey, and Board. Thank you for the opportunity to come present our technology roadmap. My organization, it's very important that we focus on business operations. Whenever we make, is that better? Okay. Whenever we make technology decisions, it needs to be with the focus of business operations at mind. So business operations for us, we define it as learning atmosphere, a culture for learning, growth, equity access, our HR functions, accreditation, and financial health. If you focus only on governance, you'll have system performance issues, system vulnerability issues, poor end user experience, and business continuity. If you focus only on infrastructure, you'll have problems with your project implementation, you'll have technology sprawl, your costs will escalate, and your productivity will be lacking. Currently, we do not have a focus on both governance and infrastructure, so consequently, in places you're going to see business operations suffering, which we're fixing. Right now, as the Chief Technology Officer, I do not have one single SLA, service level agreement, or key performance indicator that is tracking my performance. We're in the process of identifying about 200 different reoccurring tasks that my organization does in support of the students and teachers and faculty. So we're going to start measuring those so we can make data-based decisions. First thing we're going to do, we have a technology review board. So our here's an example of some of our KPIs and SLAs that we currently work through. So time to onboard a student or an employee, offboard a student, satisfaction results, number of tickets by severity, why the tickets are coming in, which technicians are getting the tickets, which schools are having the issues, which teachers are having technology issues in their schools. We have a way to track all of that data via tickets and dashboards and event correlations. So we're going to have those. We've hired a data engineer and a Power BI developer. We should see our first dashboard next week. I'll make all of you and whoever needs it access to those so we develop a higher level of transparency. On your right there, you'll see an example of a typical graph that we have. It's by month. It says what the SLA is, what we hit, and we're going to overlay that with problem management, change management. I'll get to that here in just a moment. It's not untypical for myself or some of my peers to get a request to approve software purchase or renewal without a lot of history behind it. We're going to create a technology review board. The technology review board is made up of some of my peers. So Aaron Thompson, our CFO, myself, our Deputy Superintendent, Dr. Davis, and our Chief Legal Officer. When somebody wants to purchase something of $3,500 or more, it will be required to come up to the technology review board. We have instances where we're buying software we already have. We are guilty of buying things and promising implementation dates that we are not staffed or there isn't the pipeline to fit them in. So the Technology Review Board will help us reduce our cost for technology sprawl and the cost that goes with it. The way the process will work, somebody will request funding. It'll come to Erin's organization. She'll say that needs to go to the Technology Review Board. We have a website with a questionnaire of about 15 questions. They'll answer that. It'll get submitted. We'll meet bi-weekly. People will come in and say, hey, this is what I would like to do. It'll be approved or it'll be denied. Once it's approved, the second part of that is to look and see when it can be implemented. There are quite a few projects out there right now, not a lot of room to put new projects in on top of it. So that leads me to this list right here. This is a list of all of our projects. We've got 29 right now. We do not have the capability to implement all 29 projects. So one of the first things the Technology Review Board is going to need to do is decide which projects we want to go and implement. We've got some key ones that are going right now that have to go. Some of these are going to have to be put on hold. If we work on a 37.5-hour work week, out of that 37.5 hours, X number of hours are spent on production support, admin tasks, etc. Whatever free time people have needs to be tracked for project work so that we can develop a capacity pipeline so that we know just how many projects we can put in. Right now, when somebody needs to make a change to a system or an application, they talk through it and implement it. It's not approved. So if there's an outage, we don't know what caused it. Rarely do outages happen with hardware failure or software problems. Usually it's caused by somebody doing something. We've created a change control board. It's going to meet on Wednesdays. It started last Wednesday. They're going to be defined in 3 major classes: major, minor, and standard. All changes that go in need to have a documented backup plan and a test plan so that once it's implemented into production, they test it and make sure that it works. We've defined a change as any work that could impact negatively the students or the faculty or the teachers. So when I say earlier about we want to have a technology roadmap that serves the business operations, this is an example. Myself or an appointee will be the final say on whether a change gets approved. So this will, not only have the change person think through their change a little bit more thoroughly, but it'll also give a platform that's a lot more stable for the students and the teachers to educate the students. We do not have a lot of data to make database decisions now. We will shortly. Each time a ticket is opened and closed, we are going to assign a cause code to the ticket. Cause codes will be baselined, and then we will look for reoccurring problems and focus irreversible corrective action on those changes. So I will give you a classic example on, I spend half of my every Friday going out and meeting the schools, talking to the teachers and the technicians that support them and asking what their technology problems are. One of the technicians told me the other day that the W and the J button on their laptop keeps sticking. So I asked him, how many of those have you had? He said, probably 50 this year. So there's obviously a defective keyboard in the laptop. So the student has to take the laptop to the technician. The technician has to get a new laptop. The student doesn't have a laptop while it's broken, and this has happened 50 times. After 4 or 5 of those, a call should have been made to the vendor. You got a faulty laptop, you got a faulty keyboard, and then they get it fixed. And then we don't have that anymore. Well, there's 50 that one doesn't have to do, but I have 13 technicians. So now you're talking maybe, hundreds. When you continually drive that process improvement cycle via the reporting and the cause codes that you put on the tickets, you help develop a lot of synergies, your processes become more effective, and you can do more with less. So problem management cause codes, we have them created. We've enabled the module in our ticketing system, and the process of getting more database-driven decisions is underway. Now to our device strategy. You'll see on the left, we are a large Dell Chromebook user. I will get in here just a second on how many that we have. Pre-K to first grade use iPads, and our iSpark program does, but other than that, everything is Chromebook for our devices. We are a one-to-one school, so each one of those Chromebooks have a hotspot device so that the student can get on the internet and do any learning that they may be required for their homework or when they're home. We are moving to an Apple district, so we've got 2 grants out there right now, the Innovation Grant, the Verizon Innovation Grant for Central, Middle, Central High, and Paseo, and then we are working with Apple to become an Apple Distinguished School for Garcia, Banneker, and King. One thing I will add is we have made the decision to go to LTE or cellular-enabled devices so that we don't have the hotspot. I'll give you an example of where that will come in very handy. I was monitoring a virtual class, a 3rd grade class the other day, and some of the students could not connect to Teams to do their learning. And we had about 2 of my people with me, and they were monitoring the network and the systems, and they couldn't get on because they didn't have bandwidth. What we discovered was the data plan that was on their hotspot was allowed X number of bandwidth for the year. They had already eaten it up, so it was throttled back to basically nothing. So in the last 2 weeks, the team rallied. We have 500 hotspots that we put unlimited data plans on, and we've redistributed those back out to our virtual learning academy kids so that they can get on and educate themselves better. If I have an LTE or a cellular-based device, I can change that plan. I push that to it. It's not another device. So a teacher could come to me and say that their students can't get on, they're having problems. I can go into the control panel and we can change the data plan that those students have. All the students are in different situations. It might be that some of their family members are using it. their bandwidth needs for their device changes from family to family to student, depending on their classes and their individual situation. So through technology, we are moving to devices that allow spatial learning. I know Dr. Collier and Dr. Davis and others have visited Apple, and we're very excited about some of the new learning methodology that they have to help our students. And we are moving to a technology that I think the school district can be very proud of and hopefully attract more students to our school district. So KCPS has definitely placed an emphasis on technology and helping to build a better platform for the students to learn. It might shock you, but we have almost 50,000 devices out there in our system right now. 19,000 of those are at end of life. So we just finalized an RFP with a salvage company. Those devices that are out of life and that have a value will be sold, and we can reap the revenue from that. But the other devices that are out there in various stages. So every single Chromebook that you see out there, we're going to replace it with an Apple device. Recently, we purchased about, I think, 10 or 12,000 Chromebooks. We shouldn't be having to buy that many. We should have an asset management and a replenishment strategy that allows us to do it in much smaller increments because the technologies change. So in the very near future, all of our old devices will be salvaged. We'll get the revenue from it. And then we'll have a process in place when we order equipment. It'll go to the vendor. It'll be asset tagged. It'll be sent to the student. And then it will be tracked. When it gets close to end of life, we'll automatically get them a new device, rebadged, take the other device and send it off instead of having the excess inventory that we have on hand. As we all know, school safety is a growing concern for our schools. There are a couple, I think Blue Valley and maybe another, I can't remember which, but we put out an RFP to have a alert badge for the faculty members. So it can, if there's a medical emergency, somebody gets sick, they can push it. And if there are more serious situations, you can push it 8 times or more, and the police can be dispatched. In some of the events that have happened across our country over the last year or two, there have been some assumptions made that people can pick up their phone and call the cell phone or get to the alarm system or the speaker system on in their schools. And when something dramatic happens, people don't think it's straight. They can't get to their phone. They can't get to the speaker system. The police don't know where they are. So when you click this, it tells whoever, based on the alert that was sent, exactly where you are, so that you don't have to think all that out. So we hope that cuts hours into seconds and helps us take care of our students. We have a demo on the 13th of April. The board, you're more than welcome to come and see it if you'd like. Working with Major Harris, we're going to have the police on hand as well, because they'll have to be a partner with us. And Saranda has also, I've asked her to invite some principals and teachers as well, so we'd like for their participation and advice on it as well. So in addition to technology from a device and helping our platform become more stable, we're also using technology to help our Kansas City public school systems be a safer place to study. So in summary, from a governance perspective, we're going to stand up a technology review board. We're going to place an emphasis on prioritizing our projects. We're going to generate KPIs and service level agreements so that we have a higher level of transparency for technology. And then from an asset management perspective and a device perspective, we're going to morph to Apple. We're going to have a very agile refresh, and then we're going to clean up our current inventory and run that part more like a factory. Any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have some questions from, I'll start down here and just go through. Ms. Buckner, do you have a question? No? Ms. Cortez?
So first of all, thank you for walking us through kind of the guts of the kind of vision, technology vision. I have a specific question about the crisis alert capabilities. When you're talking with vendors, I've seen this come up in a couple of situations now where institutions have installed crisis alert systems that are not testable in real time, because to test them is to trigger them. So I would really encourage you to go deep with the potential vendors about the ability to test our equipment once it's deployed, because some of these systems are so, they're tied into the police department, they're tied into other triggers, and so it renders them very, very challenging to test. So there become these kind of question marks about whether they're actually going to perform as promised in the moment, because they can't be, the tabletop test can't happen.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Dr. Jones, anything? Okay. I think, Mr. Scott, you're good to go.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfe.
Appreciate it. All right.
All right, and so now we'll move to our final presentation for the evening, which is our facilities update. Also, in addition, our bond planning update, and this will be presented by Dan Weekly, our Executive Director of Operations.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Collier. Tonight, we're going to go over the facilities updates, and we'll bring up Creative Entourage here in a moment to talk about some of the bond process we have at this point. And I'll introduce them once we get to that point. But first, the facilities update. So to start with, I wanted to somewhat give us a history. It's kind of a leveling. So, we'll start with the history of our schools. We'll go second down to what have we learned from Blueprint 2030 and what is deferred maintenance, which was the number one question I received during that time period. And why would maintenance be deferred? That was the second question that I got most often. And then next we'll talk about how do we prioritize capital projects and maintenance work orders. And then we'll talk about standardization and the cycle approach, or the end-of-life approach that we have undergone here in the last 10 months. And then lastly, kind of the exciting part is we'll start talking about the list of current capital projects that we'll be working through in the next spring, summer, and fall coming up. So first, history of the school. So when I started here 10 months ago, this is one of the very first things I did, and I think it's one thing that kind of gives us a better understanding of the history of our schools, and I think sometimes this is overlooked. So I really want to go over this with you because I think it's incredibly important that us as a board and as a district and as a community, we understand that 27, as you see the timeline here, 27% of our schools that have kids and staff in them are 97 years old or older. So let me say that again, 27%, so over a quarter of our schools with kids and staff are 97 years old or older. Secondly, 21 of the 37 schools, or 57%, are 55 years old or older. So that you can see from the timeline, on the timeline in the parentheses, you'll see the actual age of the building. That's what those parentheses are behind the name of the schools, to kind of give an indication of which schools and actually how precisely old they are. In addition to that, you have to remember that often these schools have gone through many different phases as well. So you may have a building like in 1950, like Melcher, that's 64 years old. It may have gone through 2 or 3 or different phases. Some have had none, some have had one, some have had several. So many different phases also have to play into this as well. The last part of it that I want to kind of a leveling and understanding of everything about this is that as-builts. And if you don't know what the as-builts are those documents or blueprints that of buildings over the years of what has happened to the building in any type of renovation or even original construction. As-builts are hard to find when your buildings are, when 25 or 27% are 97 years old. It's hard to find those as-builts. They just don't exist anymore. So please understand, one of the challenges we have as a maintenance and construction crew is understanding that where are the things that are behind the walls and above the ceilings and things like that are underground, knowing that we don't have the documents to provide us with that information. So what we've done is we've really tried to digitize the documents that we do have to make them available to our vendors that are out working in our schools, and also obviously available to our own staff as they work on facilities throughout the district. So the district, in its great wisdom, in spring of 21 did a facility assessment, and that facility assessment is a part of what's called the Accredited Learning Environment Planner.
And so the ALIP is a facility assessment that has 7 core competencies, and one of those competencies is actually doing a facility assessment itself. The district hired ACI Boland, and ACI is here tonight. Raise your hand. Doug Loveland, the principal person for ACI, is here tonight. And him and his team and some others did this facility assessment in the spring of '21. So in that assessment, one of the things they discovered was obviously one thing they always look at is deferred maintenance, which was a big topic during the Blueprint 2030 piece. And during that time, of spring of '21, they estimated about $270 million worth of deferred maintenance and across our buildings. If you take into consideration the escalation of supply and labor since spring of '21 to March of '23, that number climbs to $350 million of deferred maintenance across the district. Now, the challenging part of that is obviously still we still got phases and things that we don't understand, the meshing of old systems with new systems and understanding how all those pieces fit together over periods of time. Now, back to the number one question I got in Blueprint 2030. So when I would give part of the presentations in 2030, when we broke out into those small groups, this is the question that people always ask me. I heard you say deferred maintenance, and I think I know what it means, but what is it really to you? So number one question I asked, so I kind of just looked it up and thought, I'm going to give a textbook answer since I'm an education person. And so right there it is from the according to the Federal Accounting and Standards Advisory Board, deferred maintenance and repairs are maintenance and repairs that were not performed when they should have been, or were scheduled to be and were a part of or put off or delayed to a future time period. So those maintenance and repairs things are directly related to fixed assets within the district and are not taken care of. Now, what deferred maintenance is not, and I think this is sometimes just as important, is deferred maintenance is not those things that are behind walls, underground, things you cannot see, under slab, between the ceiling and the roof, or on the roof itself. So things that deferred maintenance, oftentimes I tell people, are things you can feel, touch, and see. Oftentimes, deferred maintenance can also be those things you cannot touch, feel, and see. So that $350 million that we mentioned earlier may not be an exact number because those are things we can see, feel, and touch. There may be other pieces behind the walls, under the slab, in the ceilings that may add to that number. So the second question, once you start talking about deferred maintenance, is, well, why would that happen? Why would you defer it? Well, the typical and most common reason is really just budget. There just is not enough money for that event to occur, to replace or repair or whatever it happens to be. And part of that is the second bullet, was priority. There are different priorities within the district. In public sector, there's just X amount of dollars. And oftentimes, capital projects are deferred for things that directly affect students in the classroom, like textbooks or curriculum or whatever it happens to be. So oftentimes that occurs. And my job, one of my main jobs, is to make that particular capital asset a priority as much as possible. So I can express to the district in their decision making that we really have a high return on investment for that particular capital project. Other two reasons is material. This has become prevalent recently in the last probably 36 months, as material is hard to come by, and it's somewhat of a missing target in some essential materials, and it hasn't stayed the same. Usually you kind of know what materials you're going to have and not have, or what's going to be long lead times. It's somewhat of a moving target nowadays. Labor and skill, and this is probably the one that's probably the most disheartening. We just do not have the labor and skill out there like we used to. And this is true in the private sector and in the public sector. The problem is private sector can pay so much more than we can in the public. So those folks that are skilled laborers, master electricians, master plumbers, will generally go work for those that in the private sector because they can make more money. And so if you look at our own staff of master plumbers and electricians, most of them have retired from the private sector and have come to the public sector as kind of a second career. So most of those folks are 60 years old or plus because they still want to work, and thankfully they want to work because they also understand the old systems within our buildings that are aging. So that's a benefit to us. But the current market of skilled labor that's coming out of trade schools and things like that, A, don't understand our systems and processes within our buildings, and B, there's just not enough of them. So one of the questions I often get to, and this is internal and external, is how do you prioritize capital projects and maintenance work orders? And this is a great question, and I think it's something that we struggle with on a daily basis. And every day we get work orders. Every day that occurs to us. And so how do we prioritize the work orders we already have and then the work orders that come in on a daily basis? So I know it can be very frustrating at the school level. As a former principal myself, I understand how that can be frustrating. But generally, the work orders that come in on a daily basis, 80% of them are really things that I consider to be medium level work orders that don't need immediate attention. Okay, so let's talk about what those possibly are. So the emergency ones that we see, and this is typical across everywhere. These are just the life safety things: fire alarms, gas leaks or smell of gas, exposed power, total power loss, loss of water to the entire building, floods, obviously overflowing of plumbing, power loss in the server rooms. Those are things that we have to take care of immediately. People stuck in elevators, that does occur on occasion. Failing food service freezers for the kids for their food. These are emergencies. And typically within school districts across the state, this is roughly around 2% of all work orders that come in. For us, because of the age of our buildings, these happen a little more frequently. So it's more like 5 to 10% of all of our work orders are built around emergency work orders. Now, these work orders are the idea of we drop everything and go. We don't wait, we don't call a vendor, we go. We hear about this, we're immediately sending people to that location to take care of. Next is high. These are ones that we tell our folks that immediately finish your job, and if you can get to the next place within an hour, get there. If not, tell us, so we can send somebody immediately. So highs are minor leaks, localized power loss, like one room lost 3 banks of lights, but the other lights work. Those things, odd things happen. Localized HVAC loss. This room's cold. This room's hot. This room's not working at all. Those are localized, not the entire building. Unable to lock and secure the building. We only make that a emergency if we can't get security to go to that facility and be there until we can fix it. Broken elevator that's empty. We certainly want to fix that as soon as possible. And then, of course, the loss of lighting at night. Those parking lot lights are incredibly important too. But again, generally, most work orders we get are 80% of them are really medium. Those are generalized plumbing, general maintenance items. The cabinet's loose, the chalkboard needs to be fixed. Those types of things. So. Next is low. These are just like hanging pictures, aesthetic type things that we do. Painting in offices may be out of cycle. Just generalized low priority, but things we try to get done as much as possible. And then last is kind of on its own is really scheduled preventative maintenance. These are things we do on a regular basis to uphold our fixed assets, things that make our fixed assets last longer, and at the same time bring value to the district in doing that. So the next question is how do we decide upon capital projects? Generally, capital projects are larger dollar projects that we have throughout the district. My big priority, and I say this every time we talk about big capital projects, is how's it going to affect infrastructure? Because without infrastructure, especially in older buildings like ours, we can't function as a school district. So what can we do to maximize our dollars and making sure that we're affecting infrastructure on every capital project? The last 3 bullets are really those things that really have no potential priority. They're all kind of mixed in and being very important, which are, facilities that don't meet the needs of the current educational program. Do the facilities meet the needs of extra or co-curricular, those being like band or orchestra or basketball? And then new educational programs that come online for, in a given year, or a co-curricular program that we need to support. Something we've started recently that we're really excited about and we think is going to make a major difference for us, not only in efficiency and effectiveness, but I think it's going to be long-lasting. We have really started to vet out paint colors and sustainability of colors over time, flooring options, roofing options, all these pieces that we're going to standardize across the district. Like, give you an example, if we're going to paint an elementary school, we're probably going to focus on 4 different colors, and those are the only 4 colors we're going to use. Certainly there are exceptions to that, we understand that, but we're going to try to focus on a certain amount of colors so we can get those integrated, get them in stock so they're readily available, and we know that they're high quality pieces of material. And that's true with flooring, roofing, it doesn't matter what it is. So we're also doing that with student and adult furniture, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. Also the cycled approach, and the cycled approach is incredibly the end-of-life type approach. So we have a better understanding now as we integrate all of our fixed assets into our software system that we use of what all of our fixed assets are, what's the cycle of life for each one of those, and what's not only with our preventative maintenance, but then when does it get to the point where we just need to replace that existing fixed asset. So the next thing coming up on some of the standardization that we're kind of excited about, we have a furniture focus group, and Lizelle Allfeld is running that group, and we're really excited about working with a local WB and MBE contractor or vendor that's going to help us really reach out and try to find out some K1-2 furniture, 3-5 furniture, that type of thing, where we can really standardize some of this furniture across the board, knowing that we can get this furniture on an ongoing basis. And so we're including teachers and administrators and students and making some of those choices, so we're excited about what that will bring us. So for the fun part. So projects for the spring, summer, and fall. And so we're really excited about these. Northeast Middle School Canopy, if you know, the students get off on the west side of the building, walk around the building to the front, which is really on the east side of the facing east. We're going to build a canopy that overcomes that sidewalk so kids are out of the weather and those types of things. That has not existed in the past, and they've kind of retained kids on the buses, and that can be, for middle school kids, that's tough. So we're building a canopy to cover them during the off weather. Roofing, we're doing complete tear-offs and replacements for Faxon, Ace Lower, Garcia, and Northeast Middle School this summer. We're really excited about this. We're taking away from the idea of, if you've done capital projects on roofing before, generally capital projects for roofing is, we're going to do sections like this building. This building has 7 different sections that they do, A, B, C, through whatever. And they do certain sections, certain years to replace them. Well, that's not a good way to do it, to be quite honest with you. That's a good way to do it when you just don't have enough money. We can't do it that way. Our buildings are in the age and in the state where we need to do complete tear-offs and complete replacements, and then continue that cycle every single year, so we're on a continuous cycle where people are getting brand new roofs every year. Central Middle School gym floor. This is a complete replacement. This is the auxiliary gym. The gym's gone through several leaks, and so much of the floor is spots in the floor that are damaged, and we're completely replaced. Paseo, at the end of last school year, it was given that Paseo would have varsity sports, and so that gym was really not acceptable for varsity sports and interscholastic activity, so we're dramatically upgrading this gym. Video scoreboard, wood floor, but currently has what we call a tartan or rubber floor. We'll put a wood floor in, volleyball standards, new basketball goals, sound system, curtain divider, scorer's table, wall padding, and retractable bleachers and paint. We're really excited about that. And I know Dr. Powell was here earlier, and we talk to her on a frequent basis and go over the renderings and drawings, and we're super excited about that. International Welcome Center. Mr. Rumpf got a grant, and so they're including a library in their International Welcome Center, and we were thrilled about helping them with that. So we'll do that this summer as well. Central High School fascia. If you go on I think it's the southeast entry, you will see that there is some orange fencing that's going on there. There's some deterioration within some of the columns and some of the fascia back there in the guttering system. We need to pull that off and totally demolish that and put it back towards the building. Those columns were really not used and not foundational, and they're deteriorating because of the weather. So we're just going to remove them and get it back to the building. You'll never remember the columns that were there. So we're really excited about that as well. ESSER 3. ESSER $3, that federal money that came out, we been assigned $20 million for upgrades to HVAC mechanical systems across the district. We divided it up into 7 different packages for the hopes of getting as many MBE, WB vendors as possible. 4 of those packages, one package has already been awarded, and we have 3 other packages that we'll bring to the April meeting for approval. And then immediately after that approval, we'll put out the last 3 packages so we can get those items ordered and on site so we can begin construction as soon as possible on those as well. The last is demolition for this summer, spring and fall. King Weeks, Fairview, and the property north of Ace Lower, which is just on the north side of Ace Lower. There's an old school there, a sixth grade center school that we're going to demolish as well. Questions from the board?
I'm looking down the line. Dr. Jones? Ms. Cortez?
I apologize, you may have shared this with us in the past. Can you refresh our recollection on community engagement around the demo of those 3 buildings?
Glad you asked. I have it right here. So sixth grade center, we had an engagement on August 1st of 2022 with the 5th District Community Meeting. We also have one scheduled for April 11th, and it'll be at the SAC meeting at Ace Lower. And Jesse and Shannon will be providing that engagement. For Fairview, we did an engagement on March 8th of this year at the Pitcher SAC meeting as well. They also invited neighbors and the churches locally there to come to the meeting as well. There is no formal neighborhood association in that area. So Shannon and Jesse are going to reach out to some individual neighbors and make sure they understand what's going on, get their input as well. For King Weeks, I know Shannon, Jax, and Jesse both have been talking to that Oak Park Association for many years, but just recently, Dr. Collier, myself, Jesse, and Shannon went to the Oak Park board meeting on February 28th, and then Dr. Collier and I and Shannon and Jesse went to the Oak Park Association regular meeting on March 2nd at Central Middle School auditorium and spoke to the group there and presented them the ideas that we had in place for King Weeks. So.
Ms. Buckner, do you have any questions? No? I just want to make the point, so everything on this list on slide 49, last one right before we switched, we currently pay out of our own operating budget. Is that correct, Ms. Thompson?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I think that's a good setup.
That is a good setup. Thank you. I
There you go.
appreciate that. Any other questions for me?
No.
No?
That
All
is
right.
the end.
So next I'm going to bring up Jennifer Volk. Jennifer is the president of Creative Entourage, and she will kind of give us an update of progress at this time. And then Rod Wright was with her as well, vice president of Creative Entourage. But Jennifer will be the one talking. So come on up.
Welcome.
So thank you for having me this evening. As Dan mentioned, my name is Jennifer Volk. I'm one of the owners of Creative Entourage, and tonight I'd like to provide an overview of the community engagement program that we've launched here in KCPS to involve your community in finalizing this facility master plan that you've started to put together. So just a real quick overview of who we are. At our core, our goal is to help communities, and so all of our business is public sector. We do this through a mix of public opinion research, strategic communications, community engagement, and also graphic design and branding. And so we use all of that to help you connect with your community. So our award-winning team has been at this for about 30 years. We're proud to have some of really the pioneers of community engagement for school district on our team, and they will be here in Kansas City working with your community and your district leadership to bring this program to life. We've had the privilege to work with hundreds of school districts around the country, and you can also find us helping out fire districts, community college districts, and municipalities as well. And we're honored to have been hired by you to help out your community here. So as you saw back in January, our processes always start off with a charge from the board. And this really gives the community a good set of parameters and some guidelines on what their goal should be as we embark on this community engagement process. So back in January, you provided the community with the charge, and over the coming months, we're going to work together to help your community come up with some recommendations based on this. So we're really going to be focused on developing a plan for your buildings. And so how do we best address those long-term facility and enrollment challenges? How do we figure out what those perceptions and priorities are for your facility master plan? You have a lot of buildings and you have a lot of residents, so we're going to try to cull through that feedback and learn what people are thinking. And then the next step is, how do we actually bring this to fruition and implement this plan? Hopefully by the end of this, you'll also have an ongoing model for school district communication and community collaboration that can help you for decades to come once you build that good foundation. I thought it would be helpful just to provide a timeline of kind of where we are and where we're hopefully going to be heading over the next few months. So as you can see on the left there, we're in spring of 23, and we're hoping to move out throughout the year and potentially end with an election in April, depending on how things work. So last month, we kicked off the community engagement process with the first what we call facilitating team meeting and a series of input sessions for the public opinion research that will be happening in the next few months. The facilitating team is a team of around 20 community members, staff, advisors, and they're responsible for facilitating our process. So we also typically have up to 2 members of the board who serve on this team with us. They're really our liaisons and make sure that all of you are in the loop throughout the process. We want to make sure that you know what's happening and that you have some insight on the program as a whole. We're also in the midst of putting together a public opinion survey, as I mentioned, and so anyone in the community will be willing and able, and they can complete the online version of that survey. And then we will conduct a telephone survey of 500 randomly selected registered voters throughout your district. So as we go through this process, it's important to remember when you hear about this facilitating team, they're really the ones who are coordinating and facilitating the process. Their job is to make sure that everyone is encouraged to participate, we're gathering authentic feedback, and that the process is open, efficient, and effective. So the community is responsible for determining what will be included in the final facility plan, and that will happen during our community engagement activities. And then over the next few months, we'll work with the facilitating team to develop that program that will actually take place in the fall. Throughout the summer, we're going to be working with district leadership and advisors to develop the materials for this community engagement activities in the fall, along with communications materials that will be needed to invite the entire community to participate. So the key to this is really involving not the usual suspects. We want to reach out and find people who maybe haven't provided input before and make sure they're invited in to participate. So before that, we actually kick those off. We're going to bring all those materials back to the facilitating team and make sure that they're okay with everything and that we're ready to launch in the fall. So once we do hit the fall point, we are going to, like I mentioned, invite everybody we can to come and provide feedback. And so this is a chance for them to get inside your buildings. So a lot of our parents are in our school buildings a lot. Obviously, a lot of the staff are in the buildings a lot. There's probably community members who haven't been in your buildings in 20 or 30 years. And so this will be a chance for them to come in, see them firsthand, experience them, and learn how education has changed in that time and how buildings have changed to help students succeed. And we encourage you during that process to attend these sessions and thank the community for their involvement and really hear for yourself what they're saying and what they're saying about your school buildings. So these community engagement activities can take a lot of different forms. As I mentioned, we've done this in a lot of districts, and what we've learned is the facilitating team really has the best knowledge of how to get out to your community and what they'll be most receptive to. So some districts, the open houses and building tours do really well. In others, large-scale community engagement sessions where we have 200 to 400 people in a room providing feedback works well. And so we will really be leaning heavily on your facilitating team to help us decide what will work best here in Kansas City. At the end of that process, right before this December recommendations come, we will be conducting a second public opinion survey. We really want to gauge what people have learned through this process, and if there are things that we missed or things that people still want to learn more about or need to know about. And so that second survey will provide us with that. In December, you'll have community members from that facilitating team up where I am standing right now presenting the community recommendations to all of you. Our hope is that you will receive and review those recommendations before you finalize that exact proposal, if any, to place on the ballot in April. So let's say that there is a proposal on the ballot in April. We will work with your district communications team, we'll work with you and district leadership to put together an informational communications plan, a multi-channel approach to make sure that everybody in the community knows about the plan, the need for the plan, how it was put together. So it's important to remember, though, when we hit that point, that it's the school district's role and responsibility to inform the community about any potential ballot proposal. It cannot advocate for or against that using any district funds, and we'll help you through that process if we hit that point as well. So then in April, the community will be given the opportunity one last time to provide their feedback on this facility master plan at the ballot box. So as we embark on this process, we have a couple things that we're hoping we can ask of you. And first of all, that we're hoping that you can be open, first of all, to the charge that you provided back in January, to invite the community and invite those people that you know in your communities to participate, get engaged, provide their feedback. Attend the activities. As I mentioned, see what people are saying, see what they're learning. Hear that for yourself. Actively express gratitude to those that are there. There's so many programs where a lot of times board members will go up and talk and shake hands and have a chance to really interact with the community, and there's a lot of value to that, and so we really try to encourage that. If you have concerns, let the facilitating team know sooner rather than later. It's always better to know earlier on in the process if there's a hurdle or something that we can overcome rather than in December when those recommendations are coming forth. So if you see anything, let us know. And then at the end, just listening and receiving those recommendations from your community and then taking that to the next step for what's best for your schools and your students. So I think that's all that I have. We look forward to working with all of you over the next few months, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the engagement process.
Thank you, Ms. Volk. Appreciate that. I'm going to start down on the right with Ms. Buckner.
I don't know if I like this, that process.
I am not Mr. Hogan. I do it Yen's way.
Thank you for that. Just a quick question. Are you local?
No, we are based out of St. Louis.
Okay, out of St. Louis. So I'm sure that you've heard we've recently done a lot of engagement around Blueprint 2030, superintendent search. And I don't want to speak for the rest of my colleagues, but I don't know that I've been pleased with the engagement. And I don't know, I think closer to the end when we start talking about issues that were very, very personal to folks is when we saw the most engagement. Mm-hmm. And so that leads me to my concern, and I don't know if this is a question for you or for our marketing team, but how will we really engage the folks that are, I would say, directly affected? Because when I see community here, I can assume we're talking about the city at large, voters at large. And my concern is that our families' voices may get lost in that process. And so how are we going to really elevate and ensure that our community, meaning our students and families who attend, our schools, will be heard at a, significantly, how are we going to change our approach?
Right, and so I think I've looked through a lot of the Blueprint 2030 and those types of things, and I think there's a great foundation there. In our view, I think we're going to be looking at a lot of school-level activities, and so I think that we need to go to those individual buildings and really focus the content and focus the information we're presenting and the feedback we're gathering on those pieces that are impacting those families the most. And so I think we need to work within those buildings and figure out the best way to reach those parents. There are times when we will tag on to another activity. So let's say it's a concert or something like that. How can we weave in some engagement activities when those parents are already in the building to make sure that we're getting that feedback? We'll want to make sure that we have things translated. And I know that sounds simple, but there's so many districts we go and work with that don't translate materials, things like that. And so we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to get the information and then also provide that feedback. We'll also likely, and I'm not for sure, we'll have to talk to the facilitating team, be providing some in-person and some virtual opportunities because some people, it's really hard to get to a meeting no matter what time we do that, but maybe it's a little easier to hop onto a Zoom or things like that. And so we really try to offer things at different times and different methods to open up that feedback opportunity. I'd also like to talk with your communications team and find out what worked and what didn't work through that blueprint process. So there's a lot of things that we still need to learn about that piece too.
Ms. Cortez? Okay. Dr. Jones? I have just a suggestion related kind of to the question that Ms. Buckner asked. The neighborhood, because of the superintendent search process, I became familiar with, there's a a group specifically at UMKC that is focused on neighborhood level leaders, cohorts, training neighborhood leaders, and I found them to be an excellent resource.
That would be
So I
great.
would highly suggest that you get connected with them. I'm sure someone in our group knows how to get all.
Somebody can help us with that.
Yeah, if not, I can. Okay.
That sounds like a great group.
Do I see any other questions? Ms. Buckner? Ms. Buckner? No? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vogt. Well, that brings us to the end of the superintendent's report, and so moving on quickly to the Board of Directors report. The chair would like to recognize Board Treasurer Ms. Rita Cortez.
Thank you. To think for a second. Thank you, Ms. Wolsey. Ms. Thompson is going to kick me from underneath the table if I stray here, so, or if I say anything that needs to be corrected. So you're fully empowered, Ms. Thompson. Thank you for we're going to walk through this relatively quickly. As we do each time, we kind of talk about when our revenues come in. Most of our revenues come in December and January related to the payment of property taxes within our boundaries. So we're kind of at a high point in terms of net assets that we will spend down for the next 12 months in terms of continuing to operate the school. One important note about the budget or the budget report as of the end of February, typically we would hope to see that our expenditures are about 2/3 of what we project at this point in time. As we've discussed in previous presentations, we are running behind. Some people would call it behind budget, some people call it ahead of budget, but essentially what we're saying is we are spending less than we have projected. That's really driven by a number of factors, the two largest of which are the ESSER 3 spending that Mr. Weekly talked about in his presentation. So that's a very large amount that will be committed toward the end of this fiscal year. The second piece is staffing. Where we have vacancies, we continue to see, underspend in the budget. So right now we're running about 10 to 15% behind where we would expect to be from an expenditure standpoint. A fair amount of that is related to the ESSER 3 spending, but it's only a piece.
Yes.
So we continue to work to make sure that we have all of our resources in place. Next slide, please. So this really shows revenue by source, and as we remind folks, our largest resource are local revenues. That remains the case and will remain the case for the foreseeable future. We have a couple of anomaly years. This is one of them where we have significant, much more federal revenue than we will see after the end of next school year. That relates to the funding that started during the COVID shutdown, and you'll hear us talk about ESSER. That's the series of funding resources that the federal government provided and we continue to use to supplement activities within our classrooms, within our buildings, and to provide some physical improvements. Next slide, please. Pie chart that shows what I said in a lot of words in a very simple graphic. Next slide, please. This slide, again, kind of shows you the where we are kind of behind our anticipated spend. Capital outlay is the most obvious outlier. That's that ESSER 3 funding that relates to air quality improvements within a number of our buildings. But you can see we're particularly in the salaries and benefits. Remember, salary and benefits makes up almost 2/3 of our total cost of operation on an annual basis. So that's really the biggest impact. So this is a prettier slide than all the numbers for those of you who are better at graphic representation of things. Again, it shows you that 2/3 salaries and benefits really is the biggest expenditure. Finally, in this slide, and I'll ask you to go on to the next one. Again, we are kind of at the peak of our assets because of the payment of property taxes. The state gives us guidelines about how we can invest our school district resources, and the answer is very conservatively. And we continue to do that, and keep an eye on the organizations with whom we invest, and those investments mature essentially to time out with payroll. So to ensure that we have enough cash available to continuing to operate. So, any questions?
Doesn't look like we do.
You're going to miss this.
I'm really going to miss this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, both Ms. Thompson and Ms. Cortez. All right, we've come to the ASETI Board resolution. I just want to extend a apology that I did not flip the agenda so that you did not have to sit through the entire previous part, but I appreciate you sticking with us. The chair right now would like to recognize Ms. Candace Buckner to present the ASETI Board resolution. Ms. Buckner?
I will reserve my comments for later, just to let everybody know. But I'll just go ahead and read. Whereas Kansas City Public Schools, KCPS, envisions its schools as places where every student will develop a deep understanding of the knowledge and skills necessary to pursue higher education, obtain family-supporting employment, contribute to the civic well-being of the community, and have the opportunity for a rewarding and fulfilling life. Whereas the African-Centered Task Force, founded in 1989, consists of Kansas City, Missouri School District, KCPS-TV, administrators and staff, community members, parents, teachers, and African-centered scholars who met regularly to conduct research, develop goals, craft curriculum, construct culturally relevant pedagogy, and author professional development, all in an effort to establish an African-centered education program within the district. Whereas the African-centered program at Kansas City, Missouri School District started at J.S. Chick Elementary in 1990 and became known as J.S. Chick African-Centered Schule, J.S. Chick African-Centered Schule. Immediately becomes a pioneer in African-centered programs within the traditional public school district context. Whereas in the 1995-96 school year, J.S. Chick African-Centered Schule is lauded for its academic performance, closing what is commonly referred to as the Black-White Achievement Gap, as evidenced by that year's scores on the statewide assessment. J.S. Chick African-Centered School would remain one of the state of Missouri's top performing schools until its closure in 2007. Whereas the African-Centered Task Force incorporated in 2007 as the African-Centered Education Task Force Incorporated, ASETI, and entered into a promising agreement with Kansas City, Missouri School District to reconstitute the closing Southeast High School complex as the African-Centered Education Collegium Campus, ACE, serving grades pre-K through 12, the only school in the district portfolio to do so. Whereas the African-Centered Education movement grew nationally, the J.S. Chick African-Centered Schule, ACE Collegium Campus remained a shining example of educational excellence. In Kansas City, evidenced by the numerous visits by dignitaries, the First Lady of the United States, Laura Bush, the Governor of the State of Missouri, Bob Holden, among them. University scholars, authors, national publications, as well as the National Alliance of Black School Educators and others seeking to replicate the ACE model also visited the campus. Whereas the ACE Upper Campus successfully graduated 3 senior classes with 100% graduation rate and in excess of $1 million in scholarships to institutions of higher education awarded to graduates. The ACE Robotics team was the only team selected from the state of Missouri to attend the White House Science Fair. ACE scholars displayed their sanitizing lunchbox invention and presented it directly to then President Barack Obama. Whereas the ACE Collegium campus closed following the 2011-2012 school year, ending a vaunted 24-year legacy of struggle, collaboration, and excellence within Kansas City Public Schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved Number 1, that the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors acknowledges that these resolutions relate to circumstances that predate the entirety of the current Board of Directors and Superintendent. Resolved. Number 2, that the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors and the Superintendent affirms their willingness to meet with representatives of the African-Centered Education Task Force in the interest of reestablishing ties and fostering a collaborative working relationship moving forward. Resolved. Number 3, that the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors, as well as the Superintendent, will retroactively acknowledge and honor the ACE Robotics Team scholars who were the sole participants from the state of Missouri invited to the White House Science Fair to present their self-sanitizing lunchbox invention. Resolved. Number 4, that in the current public education environment, the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors recognizes and values the importance and need for broader community and family engagement in schools. The Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors commit to the transparent process of inviting and strengthening community voice to create a world-class education environment for every child. Resolved. Number 5, that the Kansas City Public Schools Board of Directors acknowledges the 34-year history, legacy, and founders of African-Centered Education as a public school partnership with Kansas City, Missouri School District, and honors the African-Centered Task Force and African-Centered Schools, J.S. Chick and Sanford B. Ladd, African-Centered Education Task Force Incorporated, and the African-Centered Education Collegium Campus as the champions and vanguard of African-Centered Education institution building in Kansas City and beyond. Resolved. Number 6, that in the spirit of accelerating the student achievement aims of Kansas City Public Schools, we recognize ASETI as a proven, worthy partner, and KCPS is a valuable and important community asset to build bridges to the future for the benefit of our kids, our families, and our community. We express regret for past disagreement and apologize for not seeking a restoration of our relationship prior to now. We seek a renewed partnership and path forward together.
Thank you very much for reading that. You did a very nice job on a very long resolution. At this point, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. At this point, are there any comments or questions?
Yes.
Oh, actually, can I go first?
Sure.
I'm so sorry. I actually would like to recognize my board colleague, Ms. Candace Buckner, who I believe this came through your communication and, I forget it. It's the CCE committee. And, bringing this to the full board for us, and I believe it has been almost a year. So I just want to recognize you for doing that and seeing this through to the very end. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsey. So, first, I want to just name that this didn't just come out of nowhere. There were some amazing folks that brought this to my attention. And so I want to acknowledge them, the folks that led the charge of the restoration effort. This is first, in particular, Spark Bookhart, Dr. Linwood Tawhid, and Ajamu. I would also like to acknowledge Queen Mother Ballard, Archie Ballard, and the Ballard family that has served this district, that has some significant roots in this district. And then further, I would like to thank our board that had the courage and commitment to really analyze and empathize with what was in front of us. And so that just took a lot of our brain power and heart power as well. And so thank you for that. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any other things? Thank you. I guess, Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, and I do want to make note so that those in the audience know that unfortunately Ms. Ford had to drop off. She had an obligation come up, but she was also supportive of the resolution. So with that, the motion passes.
And I'm sorry, I did not acknowledge Dr. Collier and her team that also contributed to this as well.
Absolutely, thank you. All right. Okay. Thank you for the patience back there tonight. I really do appreciate it. Moving on to the next item of business under the Board of Directors report is the ad hoc committee reports. We only have one tonight. It is from the Superintendent Search Committee. And unfortunately, since Ms. Ford was unable to be here, I am thrilled to report that earlier this evening, the board unanimously approved Dr. Collier's contract as the superintendent of Kansas City Public Schools. Congratulations, Dr. Collier. It is official. Right. We've banished that word. And we will at another time, just for those following and still here with us, we intend to have a big celebration, not at 8:45 on a Wednesday night. So just know that that is also coming. Right. So moving on, we're now over to regular business items.
Here we are.
And the chair would love to recognize Superintendent Dr. Collier.
All right. I think this is the only thing standing between us and our exit. So let me get to it. We have 4 items this evening, or 6 items this evening. Oh, yeah, looking at both pages. The first is Norton and Schmidt Consulting Engineers, and the administration recommends approval of the mechanical engineering services with Norton and Schmidt for the replacement of HVAC system at Northeast Middle School. The estimated contract amount is $273,962.15.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So that will go to Dr. Jones and Ms. Buckner. It has been moved and seconded to approve the Norton and Schmidt for consulting engineers in an amount not to exceed $273,962.15. Do I see any debate on this motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner? Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes.
All right, our second business item is Puro Zone Incorporated. The administration recommends approval of the amendment to the 3-year agreement to provide custodial services and supplies that increased from $204,000 to $354,000 for fiscal year 2023.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So Cortez and Dr. Jones. It has been moved and seconded to approve a contract for independent contractor to provide custodial services. Any debate on the motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
I got kicked out. Yes, the motion passes.
Okay, our third business item is the Missouri Project Aware Grant. The administration recommends approval to accept the federal grant from Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. The grant of $475,900 will be used to develop a sustainable infrastructure for school-based mental health programs and services.
Do I have a motion on the Missouri Project Aware Grant?
So moved. Second.
Dr. Jones and Ms. Buckner. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
And Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes. Dr. Collier?
Okay, our fourth business item is the Digital Promise Grant. First Amendment The administration recommends approval to accept the additional grant from Digital Promise Global to create an innovative learning environment at Central High School. The additional grant of approximately $600,000 will provide a device with data plan for each student and teacher, professional learning, and funding to support for a coach for teachers.
Okay, do we have a motion on the Digital Promise Grant for Central?
I do have a question.
Sure. We'll do the.
Yep. Sorry.
No problem. I'm going to get this right by the end. So I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
So that was Dr. Jones and Ms. Cortez. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate or questions on this motion?
Yes, sorry again. I know that you've mentioned, Dr. Collier, a few grants coming our way towards some of our schools. I just want to know if will be any conflicts. I don't know if this is the same grant or that we've talked about. I know that there's some other grants or opportunities with devices involved. So what does that look like?
This is an extension of the grant that was already provided. Originally, there were two of our secondary schools selected, Paseo and Central Middle. We later found out that they decided to also accept Central High School. So that's why this is coming along now. But it's the same grant, that Verizon Learning Schools grant.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Seeing no more questions or debate, Lisa, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes. Dr. Collier?
Okay, our fifth business item is from Apple Incorporated. The administration recommends approval for the purchase of Apple iPads and services in the amount of $856,869.50. The iPads will be provided to Garcia, King, and Banneker Elementary Schools to develop and sustain innovative teaching and learning and to align with Blueprint 2030 goal of creating STEAM programs in elementary schools.
Wonderful. Is there a motion for the Apple Inc. iPads?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Cortez and Dr. Jones. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion or questions? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes.
Okay, and our final item is the Sherwood Center contract. The administration recommends approval of the amendment to the 2022-23 agreement with Sherwood Center that provides instruction and related services to students with special education needs. The contract amount will increase from $700,000 to $1 million. Sherwood Autism Center is a DESE-approved private agency.
All right. Is there a motion on the Sherwood Center agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Jones and Ms. Cortez, moved and seconded. Is there any debate on this motion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion passes. Next, we have consent agenda items. Do I have a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Jones and Ms. Cortez have moved and seconded the items. Lisa, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Buckner?
Yes.
Ms. Cortez?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Wolfsey?
Yes, the motion or the consent agenda passes. All right, so that brings us to the review of task and action items. And I'm also going to just tell you we've got the whole DAC thing separate. So we know we have that list from Angie, but you want to review some of the items?
I did not capture any items. I do have a copy of Ms. Lyle's report so we can address her issues.
Okay, we will review the meeting and just double check that we've got all of those. Okay. This brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for the evening. So if there is no objection, the meeting is adjourned, and our next meeting will be April 12th when we'll be swearing in new officers. Everybody have a nice evening. The meeting's adjourned.